Some of the most useful things in your home were never supposed to exist. They weren't planned, and they weren't designed. They were mistakes. Spilled chemicals, forgotten experiments, and one melted chocolate bar that changed kitchens forever. Here are 10 everyday inventions that were created completely by accident. Number 10 will make you look at your old toys very differently. In 1943, naval engineer Richard James was developing springs that could keep sensitive ship instruments steady in rough seas. One day, he knocked one of his springs off a shelf. But instead of crashing to the floor, it gracefully stepped down onto a stack of books, then to a table, then to the floor, where it coiled itself neatly upright. His wife Betty searched the dictionary for a word to describe it and found the word Slinky. They borrowed $500, made a small batch, and demonstrated it at a Philadelphia department store in 1945. All 400 units sold out in 90 minutes. Over 300 million Slinkies have been sold since, all because of one clumsy moment. The potato chip was allegedly born out of pure spite. In 1853, at a resort in Saratoga Springs, New York, Chef George Crumb kept getting his fried potatoes sent back by a picky customer who complained they were too thick and soggy. Annoyed, Crumb decided to teach him a lesson. He sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them until they were too crisp to eat with a fork, and covered them in salt. The plan backfired beautifully. The customer loved them. Saratoga chips became the talk of the resort and eventually spread across the country. Today, the snack that an angry chef invented as revenge is a global industry worth over $30 billion a year. Coca-Cola was never meant to be a soft drink. It was meant to be medicine. In 1886, Atlanta pharmacist John Pemberton was trying to create a tonic for headaches, fatigue, and nerves. He mixed coca leaf extract and cola nut into a syrup and sold it at a local pharmacy for 5 cents a glass. The story goes that the syrup was accidentally blended with carbonated water, and customers preferred the fizzy version. Pemberton's bookkeeper suggested the name Coca-Cola and wrote it down in the flowing script that is still used today. Pemberton died just 2 years later, never knowing that his failed headache remedy would become one of the most recognized brands on planet Earth. In 1968, a chemist at 3M named Spencer Silver was trying to invent a super-strong adhesive for aircraft. He failed spectacularly. What he created instead was a weak glue that barely held anything and peeled right off without leaving a mark. For 5 years, nobody could think of a single use for it. Then his colleague Art Fry got frustrated that the paper bookmarks in his Churcham book kept falling out. He coated them with Silver's useless glue, and they stayed put, then peeled away cleanly. That failed aircraft adhesive became the Post-it note. Today, around 50 billion of them are sold every single year. In 1903, French chemist Edouard Benedictus knocked a glass flask off a shelf in his laboratory. It hit the floor, but instead of shattering into pieces, it cracked and held its shape. The flask had contained a plastic solution called cellulose nitrate, which had evaporated and left an invisible film coating the inside, holding the fragments together. Later, Benedictus read about car crash victims being injured by shattering windshields and realized his broken flask could save lives. He patented laminated safety glass in 1909. Today, it is in every car windshield on Earth, a technology that has prevented millions of injuries, born from a single moment of clumsiness. Super glue was rejected twice before anyone realized it was genius. In 1942, chemist Harry Coover was trying to make clear plastic gun sights for the war. One of his compounds, cyanoacrylate, seemed hopeless because it stuck to absolutely everything it touched. So he threw it out. 9 years later, while working on jet cockpit canopies, his team stumbled onto the same sticky compound, and it ruined their equipment again. But this time, Coover realized something. A glue that bonds instantly, without heat or pressure, was not a failure. It was a product. It even ended up in the Vietnam War, where medics sprayed it on wounds to stop bleeding. Not bad for a failed gun sight. In 1945, engineer Percy Spencer was standing next to an active radar set at Raytheon when he noticed something odd. The chocolate bar in his pocket had completely melted. Curious, he grabbed a bag of corn kernels and held it near the radar tube. and popcorn started popping all over the lab. Next, he tried an egg, which promptly exploded in a colleague's face. Spencer realized that microwaves could cook food from the inside. Raytheon's first commercial microwave oven was nearly 2 meters tall and cost the equivalent of $60,000 today. Now there is one in over 90% of American homes, all thanks to a melted snack. In 1956, engineer Wilson Graybatch was building a device to record heartbeats when he reached into a box of parts and pulled out the wrong resistor. When he installed it, his circuit did not record heartbeats. It produced them, pulsing with a perfect, steady electrical rhythm. Graybatch immediately realized what he was holding: a machine that could keep a failing human heart beating. He spent 2 years shrinking it down in a barn behind his house, and in 1960, the first implantable pacemaker was placed in a 77-year-old man who lived for 18 more months. Today, over 1 million pacemakers are implanted every year, all descended from one wrong component. In 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen was experimenting with electron beams in a vacuum tube when he noticed a screen across the room glowing, even though the tube was covered in thick black cardboard. Some invisible ray was passing straight through it. When he held objects in front of the beam, he could see through them, including his own hand, with its bones clearly visible inside. He called them X-rays, X for unknown. Weeks later, he took the first X-ray photograph in history of his wife's hand. When she saw her own skeleton, she reportedly said, "I have seen my death." Röntgen received the very first Nobel Prize in physics and refused to patent his discovery. He gave it to the world for free. The most important accident in history happened because a scientist forgot to clean up. In September 1928, Alexander Fleming returned to his London laboratory after a 2-week holiday and found something strange in a stack of petri dishes he had left by the window. One dish, growing bacteria, had been contaminated by a blue-green mold, and around that mold, every single bacterium was dead. That mold was Penicillin, and Fleming had just discovered the world's first true antibiotic. He famously said, "One sometimes finds what one is not looking for." Penicillin went on to save an estimated 500 million lives, more than any other medicine ever created, all from one moldy dish that was never supposed to exist. Spilled flasks, forgotten dishes, wrong parts, and melted chocolate. History's greatest inventions were not planned. They were noticed. The next world-changing mistake might be sitting in a lab or a kitchen right now. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more stories about the strange accidents that built the modern world. Thanks for watching.